Camp Pendleton, California, October 1972, 05:30 in the morning. The fog hasn't burned off yet. It rolls in from the Pacific and settles on the hills like wet wool. The base is already awake. It's always awake. Boots on gravel. Cadence calls drifting from somewhere past the tree line. The smell of diesel, salt air, and coffee that's been burned 3 times over in a steel urn. Behind the main training complex, past the rifle ranges, there's a pit. The Marines call it the bowl. A sunken square of packed dirt and sawdust, 40 feet across, ringed by wooden bleachers gone gray in the sun. This is where Marines learn to fight with no weapon in their hands. Where they find out what their bodies can do. Where boys from Ohio and Texas and Alabama learn who they become when the rifle is gone and the other man is close enough to smell. This morning the bowl is full. 300 Marines packed onto the bleachers, recruits in the back, instructors up front, a handful of officers in pressed uniforms in the first row. There's a current in the air today, something unusual. Word has been going around for a week. A civilian is coming, a martial artist. Some kung fu man from Hollywood, and the instructors are not happy about it. Standing in the center of the bowl, arms crossed, is the reason they're not happy. Master Sergeant Earl Dunigan. The men call him the Anvil, not as a joke, as a warning. Dunigan is 41 years old, 6 feet 4 inches tall, 250 pounds. None of it's soft. He's built like something poured into a mold and left to set. Shoulders that strain the seams of his utility shirt. Forearms like mooring rope. A neck that runs straight from his jaw to his shoulders with nothing in between. His head is shaved to gray stubble. His face is weathered the way leather gets weathered, by sun and salt and 23 years of being yelled at and yelling back. 2 tours in Vietnam. A bronze star he never talks about. A scar across his left forearm he got in a trench outside Key San, close enough to the enemy that the rifle didn't matter anymore, only the hands. He came home from that and he made a decision. He would make sure no Marine under his instruction ever froze the way men froze when the killing got close and personal. He would teach them. He would condition them. He would make them hard. So they made him the senior hand-to-hand combat instructor at Camp Pendleton. And for 15 years, that's what he 4,000 Marines through this bowl. 4,000. He knows the number exactly because he writes every name in a logbook. Technique. Knife work, bayonet, grappling, striking. The brutal, simple, effective business of ending another man with nothing but what you were born with. And in 15 years in this bowl, Earl Dunigan not to a fellow instructor, not to the Golden Gloves boxer who transferred in from Paris Island and thought he was something, not to the college wrestler who'd placed at nationals, not to the 2 younger sergeants who jumped him together one afternoon as a joke and woke up looking at the sky. The Anvil does not lose in the bowl. It's not pride. It's just fact, like gravity, like the tide. And then there's the drill, the one that made him a legend across 3 bases. It's simple. The Anvil stands in the center of the bowl, feet planted, hands at his sides, and he gives a man 5 seconds. 5 seconds to hit him as hard and as many times as that man can, anywhere on the body, full force. No gloves, no pads, no rules except one. You can't go for the eyes or the throat. Everything else is open. The gut, the ribs, the kidneys, the jaw. Hit the Anvil any way you want, as many times as you can, for 5 seconds. The deal is this. If you move him off his spot, you pass. If you make him take a step, you pass. If you knock the wind out of him even once, even for a second, you pass. 5 seconds is all you get. 5 seconds to do something to the immovable man. In 15 years, nobody has passed. Recruits have tried. 240-pound recruits have tried. They've hit him with everything they had. They've broken their own hands on his ribs. The anvil just stands there, absorbs it, lets the punches land on a body conditioned by 2 decades of taking punishment on purpose. And when the 5 seconds end, he opens his eyes, looks at the gasping recruit, and says the same thing he always says. A punch is nothing. A punch is a boy throwing a tantrum. You want to hurt a man, you have to be more than angry. You have to be trained. Now get back in line. He said it 4,000 times. He believes every word. 300 Marines have hit Earl Junigan with their best shot in that bowl. Not one of them ever moved him. Not one of them ever took his breath. Not one. This is the man the kung fu actor is coming to demonstrate in front of. The recruits in the bleachers know the stories. The newer ones half believe them. So this morning, before the civilian arrives, a few of them ask for a demonstration. They want to see the drill. The instructors love this. It sets the tone. It reminds everyone whose house this is. Junigan picks a recruit out of the front rows. Big kid. Private first class named Halloran. 6'2", 220, all farm muscle from Nebraska. The kind of 19-year-old who's been the strongest person in every room he's ever walked into. Halloran climbs down into the bowl, grinning, embarrassed, and excited at the same time. The other recruits yells, "Drop him, Halloran." Everybody laughs. Junigan plants his feet, drops his hands to his sides, closes his eyes. He always closes his eyes. It's part of the show. It says, "I don't even need to see you coming." 5 seconds, private, he says. "Best you've got, go." Halloran swings. The first punch lands flush in the anvil's stomach, a real punch. A farm-strong 19-year-old's full-power right hand buried into the gut. It would fold most men. It makes a sound like a dropped sandbag. Junigan doesn't move, doesn't grunt, doesn't blink, and his eyes are closed anyway. Halloran throws again and again. Left, right, left, both hands now hammering the ribs, the stomach, throwing everything his big young body can produce. The crowd is counting. 1, 2. The punches are landing clean. You can hear them. Thud, 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 and the anvil stands there like the punches are weather. 4. Already. His own punches are costing him more than they're costing Junigan. His face is red. His arms are slowing. He throws one last desperate hook into the older man's side with a sound like a butcher's cleaver. 5. "Time," Junigan says. He opens his eyes. He hasn't moved an inch. The dirt under his boots isn't even disturbed. Halloran is bent over, hands on his knees, gasping, shaking out a right hand that already looks swollen. The anvil reaches out and pats him on the shoulder, almost gentle. "Good effort, son. Strong, but strong isn't trained." He looks up at the bleachers. 300 Marines staring down. "Strong isn't trained," he says again, louder so the back rows hear it. "Remember that today, no matter what you see." The recruits roar. Halloran limps back to his seat to a hero's welcome even in defeat. He lasted 5 seconds against the anvil. They all do. That's the point. Nobody does anything in those 5 seconds. The drill isn't really a contest. It's a sermon. And the sermon is always the same. Your body is a weapon only if someone teaches it to be. And there is no teacher harder than the anvil. Up in the front row, a Marine officer watches all of this without smiling. Colonel James Whitfield, 50 years old. Quiet eyes. He's the one who arranged today. He's the reason a civilian is about to walk into this bowl, and he knew exactly what kind of reception that civilian would get. Whitfield is not a typical officer. He spent time as an attaché in Hong Kong in the 60s. He saw things there. Saw men move in ways that the Marine Corps manual didn't have words for. And about a year ago, he saw a young Chinese man on a film set do something with his hands that Whitfield, a combat veteran of 2 wars, could not explain. It bothered him. It bothered him for months. because Whitfield's whole life was built on the belief that he understood violence, and this man had shown him a kind of violence he didn't understand. So he made some calls. He pulled some strings. He told his superiors it was about evaluating new close combat methods for the Corps, modernizing the program, staying ahead. All true, technically, but the real reason was simpler. He wanted to see it again. He wanted his hardest instructors, his anvil, to see it too. Because Whitfield had a suspicion he could barely admit to himself, that everything the Corps taught about hand-to-hand combat, everything Earl Junigan had built his life on, might be missing something. Something the small Chinese man understood and they did not. Junigan walks over to the front row, stands in front of the colonel, salutes, but there's an edge to it. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted, Earl." This is a mistake, with respect. These men look up to what happens in this bowl. We bring in some television actor, some movie fighter, let him do his flips and his yelling in front of the recruits. We undercut everything we've built. They need to believe in what we teach them, because someday it's the only thing standing between them and a man with a knife in the dark. Junigan's jaw tightens. "I've seen that dark, sir. I know what keeps a man alive in it, and it isn't kung fu from a movie." Whitfield looks at him for a long moment. He understands the man's fear, he even respects it. "I hear you, Sergeant." The gate at the top of the bowl. "But I'd ask you to keep an open mind for 1 hour. That's all, 1 hour." Junigan follows the colonel's eyes to the gate, and that's when the car pulls in. A modest sedan, dusty from the coastal road. It parks at the edge of the lot. 2 men get out. One is tall, an athletic Filipino man carrying a gym bag. The other is small, smaller than anyone expected. He's wearing a simple black track jacket and dark slacks. No uniform, no belt, no patches, nothing that says he's anything at all. 300 Marines turn to look, and almost in unison, almost without meaning to, they have the same thought. That's him. That little man is who they brought to teach the anvil a lesson. The instructors start to grin. Junigan, standing in the center of his bowl, uncrosses his arms for the first time all morning. He looks at the small man walking toward the pit. And the anvil, the immovable man, the 4,000 Marine legend, allows himself a slow, certain smile. This is going to be the easiest hour of his life. The small man reaches the edge of the bowl. Up close, the Marines can see him better, and it doesn't help his case. He's maybe 5'7", maybe 140 pounds soaking wet. There's no thickness to him, no bulk. The track jacket hangs loose on a narrow frame. Next to the Marines around the pit, men built like furniture, he looks like he wandered in from a college library. He moves. The recruits don't have words for it. A few of the older instructors notice it and frown. He doesn't walk like a small man. He doesn't shrink. He doesn't hurry. Every step lands soft and balanced, weight-centered, like the ground belongs to him as much as anyone. He moves the way a cat moves across a fence. Unbothered, awake. Colonel Whitfield meets him at the top of the steps. They shake hands. The colonel's whole demeanor changes, warmer, almost deferential, and the instructors notice that too. "Mr. Lee, thank you for coming. I know it's a long drive." "Thank you for having me, Colonel." The voice is quiet, accented, calm. It carries further than it should. "It's an honor to be among Marines." He turns and gestures to the tall man beside him. "This is Dan. He helps me teach." Dan Inasanto nods to the colonel, then lets his eyes travel slowly around the bowl. 300 Marines. The instructors with their arms folded. The huge gray-stubbled sergeant standing in the center of the pit, smiling at them like a man who already knows how the story ends. Dan has been to 100 rooms like this with Bruce. He knows the temperature of a hostile crowd by now. This one is hot. He leans in and says quietly, in the mix of Cantonese and English they use when they don't want to be understood, "These are not students, Bruce. These are men who already decided you're a joke before you got out of the car. That one in the middle especially, look at him." Bruce looks at him, at the anvil. He takes in the size of him. The stillness, the certainty. 250 pounds of conditioned violence with a bronze star he doesn't talk about. Bruce's expression doesn't change at all. "He's not a joke," Bruce says quietly. "He's a serious man, you can see it. He's killed people. He's saved people. He's earned everything he has." A small pause. "Which is exactly why this will be hard for him. The more a man has invested in one way of seeing the world, the more it costs him to see another. You could just give the demonstration, the principles, show them, take the applause, and to touch that man." Bruce keeps watching the anvil. We'll see what he asks for. They walk down into the bowl. And now Bruce Lee and Earl Junigan are standing in the same pit, 10 feet apart under the gray morning sky, and the size of the difference between them lands on the whole crowd at once. It's almost comical. The anvil towers over the small man, a foot taller, more than 100 pounds heavier. His hand, hanging at his side, looks like it could palm the smaller man's entire skull. A recruit in the back row says, not quietly enough, "This ain't a demonstration, it's a sacrifice." The bleachers laugh. Junigan doesn't laugh. He's a professional. But he extends one enormous hand and says, in a voice pitched to carry, "Mr. Lee, welcome to my bowl. The men are real curious to learn from you." The word "my" lands exactly where he wants it to. Bruce takes the hand. They shake. Junigan's grip is a vice, the kind of handshake that's a test, that's crushed the confidence of younger men 100 times. Bruce's hand doesn't tense, doesn't fight it, doesn't get crushed either. It just rests inside the bigger man's grip, relaxed and unhurried until Junigan lets go, and for a flicker of a second something crosses the anvil's face that the crowd can't see. A small note of confusion. The hand he just shook didn't feel like a small man's hand. He dismisses it. He's been shaking hands and breaking wills in this bowl for 15 years. Colonel Whitfield steps forward to address the bleachers. "Marines, this morning we have a guest. Mr. Bruce Lee is one of the most respected martial artists in the world. He's developed his own system, his own philosophy of combat. The Corps is always evaluating, always learning. I've asked him here to share what he knows. I expect every one of you to give him the same respect you'd give any instructor." He pauses. "And then I expect you to think hard about what you see." A few of the Marines have heard the name now. A recruit elbows his buddy. "Lee. That's the guy from the Green Hornet. Kato, the Kung Fu guy." The buddy shrugs. To most of them it means nothing. An actor, a TV man, which to a bowl full of Marines makes it worse, not better. Bruce steps to the center. He doesn't shout. He doesn't bow theatrically. He just begins to talk, easy and direct, like he's having a conversation with each man individually. "I want to thank you for letting me stand in this place," he says. "I know what this bowl is. I know what you do here. You learn to defend your life and the lives of your brothers with nothing but your body. There is no more serious training in the world." He lets that sit. "So I'm not here to tell you that what you do is wrong. One, and the idea is this." He raises a hand, holds up a single finger. "Power is not the same as effect." Silence, 300 Marines waiting. "You train to be strong, good, strength matters. Engine, where you put it, when you put it, how you put it, that decides everything. A strong man who hits the wrong place at the wrong time does nothing. A trained man who hits the right place at the right time can end a fight that he had no business winning." He lowers the hand. "I weigh 140 pounds. Most of you could lift me with one arm. So if I'm going to survive a world full of men twice my size, I cannot rely on power. I have to rely on something else. I have to understand the human body better than my opponent understands it. I have to be water. Where he is hard, I am soft. Where he is open, I am there. That word, water, a couple of the older instructors exchange a look. They've heard the phrase. They've always thought it was nonsense. Fight, and the anvil has heard enough. With respect, Mr. Lee. Junigan's voice rolls across the bowl and the whole crowd snaps toward it. He's smiling, but it's a hard smile. That's beautiful. Real beautiful, be water. Understand the body. Power is an effect. He takes a step forward. But I've been in places where the talking stops and the only thing that's real is whether you can put the other man down before he puts you down. 2 tour of it. And I've taught 4,000 Marines to survive that place. And in 15 years in this bowl, nobody, big or small, water or stone, has done a single thing to me that I couldn't take. The recruits start to murmur. They feel it coming. This is the moment they showed up for. So I'm not gonna argue philosophy with you, Junigan continues. I'm too old and you're too good with words. Let's do something simpler. Let's let these men see the difference between talking about a punch and taking one. He spreads his huge arms wide, addressing the bleachers like a showman now. We have a drill in this bowl. Maybe you heard about it on your way in. It's real simple. He turns back to Bruce, and he says the words that 300 Marines will repeat for the rest of their lives. Punch me. The bowl goes quiet. Go on, Junigan says, and now he taps the center of his own chest with 2 thick fingers, then his stomach. Right here, anywhere you like. I'm not gonna block. I'm not gonna move. I'm not gonna brace. I'll stand right here with my hands down and you hit me with your best shot. The hardest, fastest, most trained, most water punch you've got. His smile widens. And then we'll all find out together whether power is an effect. It's a trap, and everyone in the bowl knows it. It's the cruelest version of the drill, because the drill was built for this. The anvil has eaten 300 full-power punches from men who outweigh Bruce by 100 pounds, and never so much as rocked back on his heels. 140-pound man's punch against that conditioned wall of muscle is going to do nothing. It's going to slap against him like a wave against a pier. And then the eyes look down at the little actor and deliver the sermon, and the entire Marine Corps will know that Kung Fu is a movie trick. Dan Inosanto steps in fast. He puts a hand on Bruce's arm and says, low and urgent, Bruce, don't. This is his game on his ground in front of his men. There's no version of this where you win. If nothing happens, you're a fraud. If something happens, you just dropped a Marine in front of 300 Marines, and we have to drive out of here. His grip tightens. You don't have to do this. Bruce looks at his friend. And he says it, the thing he always says. It's fine. He turns back to the anvil. He studies the man, not the size of him now, the structure of him, the way he's standing, the set of his hips, the line of his spine, the slight forward jut of that conditioned belly, the breathing. Bruce watches the man breathe for one full cycle, in, out, and something behind his eyes shifts into a gear that most people don't have. You're sure, Bruce says, not a challenge, almost a kindness. You want me to punch you, hands down, no defense. Son, I've been hit by George the Cook, by Golden Gloves champions, by a 280-pound wrestler who placed at nationals. Junigan plants his feet shoulder width, squares his body, drops his hands all the way to his sides, lifts his chin. I've been hit by better men than you'll ever be, and I'm still standing in the middle of this bowl. So yes, I'm sure, hit me. Bruce nods slowly. "All right," he says, "but I'd ask one thing for the men's sake." He glances up at the bleachers, at 300 young faces leaning forward. "Have your medical corpsmen ready." Junigan laughs out loud. A real laugh from the belly, and the whole bowl laughs with him. "We always got a corpsman ready, Mr. Lee, for the recruits who break their hands on my ribs." Bruce doesn't laugh. "I wasn't talking about the recruits," he says. The laughter dies in the bowl like someone closed a door on it. Junigan's smile fades just slightly. He looks at the small, calm man standing in front of him, and for the first time, a thin thread of doubt works its way into the immovable man's chest. He doesn't know why. The math hasn't changed. 140 pounds is 140 pounds. He's the anvil. He has never been moved. But the little man isn't standing like an actor, and he isn't measuring up a wind-up. He's standing close, too close, closer than a man should stand to throw a real punch. There's no room there for a big swing, no distance to build power. Junigan expected the Kung Fu man to back off, to set his feet, to load up some dramatic flying technique. Instead, Bruce has drifted into barely arm's length, hands relaxed at his sides, mirroring the anvil's own posture, and he's just looking at him. Quiet, present, waiting. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lee," Junigan says. He means it to sound impatient. It comes out a half-step softer than he intended. The colonel leans forward in the front row. Dan Inosanto stops breathing. 300 Marines go silent. And Bruce Lee lifts his right hand to about the height of the anvil's lower ribs, palm loose, elbow soft, no wind-up, no chamber, no warning at all. The whole bowl holds its breath. It doesn't look like a punch. That's the first thing. That's what nobody is prepared for. There's no cocked fist. No turn of the hips that the eye can follow. No grunt of effort. One instant Bruce Lee's hand is hanging loose at the height of the anvil's ribs, and the next instant it has traveled 6 inches forward and made contact with the soft triangle just below Junigan's sternum, and the only reason anyone knows it happened is the sound. It isn't a thud. A thud is what Halloran's punches made. A thud is mass hitting mass. This is different. This is a sharp, flat crack, like a wet towel snapped against a tile floor, like a single hand clap in a marble room. It's over before the front row finishes flinching. The hand is already back at Bruce's side. He hasn't moved his feet. He looks exactly the way he looked 1 second ago. Calm, quiet, done. For a moment, nothing happens. And in that moment, every Marine in the bowl has the same thought, and it's a contemptuous one. That's it. That little slap. The anvil ate full-power haymakers from a Nebraska farm boy and didn't blink. This skinny actor barely touched him. The doubt that had crept into the crowd evaporates. A recruit in the third row actually starts to laugh, the first bark of it escaping, because the great Kung Fu master just patted the anvil on the stomach like he was checking if the bread was fresh. That's the first reversal. The crowd thinks it's over and that Bruce lost. Then the second reversal arrives, and it shuts the laugh off in the recruit's throat. Because Earl Junigan's body is doing something. It starts in his eyes. They go wide, not in pain, in surprise. A flash of pure animal confusion, the look of a man whose body has just sent his brain a message he has never received before. His chin, which was lifted in arrogance a half-second ago, tips forward. His mouth opens. And no sound comes out. He tries to breathe. The bowl can see him try. His chest heaves, the big conditioned chest that has absorbed 1,000 punches, and it pulls against nothing. The air won't come. The strike landed exactly on the cluster of nerves below the switchboard that tells the diaphragm to work, and Bruce hit it with a force so precisely placed that it overloaded the whole system in an instant. The diaphragm has seized. The most basic function of the human body, the one a man does 40,000 times a day without a thought, has stopped obeying him. 1. His hands, which were hanging confidently at his sides, come up, not to fight. To his own stomach. He clutches at himself. The arrogance is gone from his face, completely gone, replaced by something raw and astonished. He takes a step, a single involuntary step backward, his boot dragging through the dirt that has not been disturbed in 15 years of this drill. The whole crowd sees it. The anvil stepped back. 2. His knees start to go. The huge legs that have anchored him through 240-pound recruits and Golden Gloves champions begin to soften and tremble. He's fighting it. You can see the will in him, the 23 years of Marine Corps discipline screaming at his body to stand up. Stand up. You are the anvil. You do not go down. But the body isn't listening to the will right now. The body is busy with a more urgent problem. The body cannot breathe. 3. He sinks. His right knee touches the dirt, then his left. The man who took 300 full-power punches without moving his feet is on both knees in the center of his own bowl in front of 300 of his own Marines, both hands pressed to his stomach, his mouth open, his eyes wet from the involuntary reflex of the spasm, hauling at air that will not come. 4. The bowl is dead silent. 300 Marines frozen. Nobody is laughing now. Nobody is breathing now, almost as if they're trapped in the same spasm as the anvil. They are watching the impossible. They are watching the immovable man, the legend, the hardest human being any of them has ever known, brought to his knees and emptied of breath by a 140-pound man who barely seemed to move, who never wound up, who is standing there right now perfectly relaxed with his hands at his sides, not gloating, not smiling, just watching with something that looks almost like concern. 5. And on 5 the breath finally comes back. It comes back the way it always comes back from a solar plexus strike, in a ragged, whooping, desperate gasp that tears into the lungs and bends the whole body around it. Junigan's head drops. His shoulders shake. He pulls in one huge, ugly, life-giving breath, then another, kneeling in the dirt, his palms flat on the ground now, holding himself up. The drill that defined him was 5 seconds. 5 seconds to do something to the immovable man. And it took this small stranger 5 seconds, not to survive him, but to unmake him. 5 seconds from the snap of that hand to the moment the anvil could breathe again. And that's when the bowl detonates. It comes out of 300 Marines all at once, an eruption that has no single shape, half a roar and half a gasp, men surging to their feet, some shouting, some just standing with their hands on their heads, some pointing, all of them making noise because the alternative is to keep silently believing a thing that cannot be true. The wooden bleachers shake under 300 Marines coming up at once. Recruits are grabbing each other. Halloran, the Nebraska kid, is on his feet screaming something nobody can hear. The instructors, the hard men with their folded arms, are not folding their arms anymore. One of them has both hands over his mouth. Another is just saying over and over to no one, "What did he do? What did he do?" Colonel Whitfield does not stand and shout. He stays in his seat in the front row, very still, and on his face is the expression of a man who suspected a thing for a year and has just watched it proven in front of him. Relief and awe and a little bit of grief, all at once. Grief, because some part of him knew that what he was about to see would change the bowl forever. And it just did. Down in the dirt, the corpsman is already moving, the young medic vaulting the rail and dropping to his knees beside the gasping sergeant. But before he can get there, Bruce Lee is already crouching down in front of the anvil, not standing over him. Crouching, bringing himself low to the kneeling man's level, the way you kneel beside someone you respect, not someone you've beaten. He puts one hand on Junigan's heaving shoulder. Easy, Bruce says, quiet just for him. Easy, don't fight the breath. Let it come back on its own, it will, 2 more breaths and you'll have it. His voice is gentle, almost tender. I'm sorry, I had to make it real. They wouldn't have believed anything less. Dunigan lifts his head. His face is red and wet, and 10 years older than it was a minute ago. He looks at the small man crouched in front of him, the man he called a movie trick, the man he ordered to punch him, the man who just did in 5 seconds what 4,000 Marines could not do in 15 years. And the third reversal arrives, the one nobody on those bleachers expects. The anvil starts to laugh. It's a wheezing, broken, painful laugh, forced out between desperate breaths, but it's real, and it spreads across his ruined face like sunrise. He laughs because there is nothing else honest to do. He laughs the way a man laughs when the thing he built his whole life on falls down, and in the falling, shows him something true. He gets one hand off the ground, reaches up, and grips Bruce by the forearm hard the way Marines grip. I didn't, he gasps. I didn't even see it. Another breath. 300 men hit me with everything. Another. And I never once couldn't breathe. He shakes his head slowly, still gripping Bruce's arm. What in God's name did you just do to me, son? Bruce helps him, gets a shoulder under the bigger man's arm, and with a strength that surprises everyone watching, helps 250 pounds of Master Sergeant rise from the dirt and find his feet. Dunigan sways, steadies, stands. He's breathing almost normally now. And the two of them are standing in the center of the bowl again. 10 feet of difference between them in size, and a universe of difference in everything else. And the anvil does the last thing anyone watching ever expected the anvil to do. He steps back. He brings his boothiels together, and in front of 300 of his own Marines, Master Sergeant Earl Dunigan, the immovable man, comes to attention and renders Bruce Lee a slow, deliberate, perfect salute. The bowl loses its mind a second time, but Bruce doesn't take the salute the way the crowd wants him to. He doesn't puff up. He doesn't raise his arms in triumph. He returns a small bow, respectful, almost humble, and then he gently reaches up and pushes the anvil's saluting hand down and shakes his head. No, Bruce says, loud enough now for the front rows to hear. Don't salute me. You don't owe me anything. You stood in front of a stranger with your hands down and let him hit you in front of all your men because you believed in what you teach. That isn't foolishness. He looks up at the bleachers, at 300 Marines hanging on every word. That's the most courage I've seen all year. I'm the one who should salute you. And he does. The small Chinese man straightens, brings his own feet together, and bows deeply to the Marine he just dropped. The Marines go quiet at this, something closer to reverence, because they came to this bowl to watch a little actor get humbled by the anvil. And instead they're watching 2 warriors honor each other in the dirt. Minutes, without anyone deciding it. The whole meaning of the morning turned completely. Colonel Whitfield finally rises. He steps to the rail of the bowl and lifts a hand, and it takes a while, but the noise settles. Marines, his voice is steady, sit down. They sit, slowly. 300 men lowering themselves back onto the bleachers, eyes locked on the 2 figures in the dirt, afraid to look away in case they miss something else. Whitfield looks at Bruce. Mr. Lee, I think these men would follow you anywhere right now, but I didn't bring you here to put on a magic show. He glances at Dunigan, then back. I brought you here because I've spent 30 years believing I understood combat, and a year ago you made me doubt it. So I'm going to ask you in front of all of them, teach us, not the trick, the why. Show these Marines what just happened to the best instructor I have. And here is the reversal that lands hardest on the men who know Dunigan. Before Bruce can answer, the anvil himself speaks up, his voice still rough from the spasm. "Do it," Junigan says. He's looking at Bruce, but he's talking to his Marines. "An hour ago I stood in this bowl and told the colonel this was a mistake. I told him no Hollywood fighter had anything to teach a Marine." He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. "I was wrong. I have been teaching 4,000 men one half of the truth. This man has the other half, and I would rather be humbled in front of all of you and learn it than stay proud and ignorant for the rest of my life." He turns to Bruce. The man who fought to keep him out of the bowl looks him in the eye. "Teach my Marines, please, teach me." So Bruce teaches. For the next hour, the small man in the black track jacket walks the floor of the bowl, and the hardest unit at Camp Pendleton leans in to listen. He doesn't make them do forms. He doesn't yell. He explains. He explains that the body is not a uniform wall of strength, that a man can condition his abdomen for years, the way Junigan did, and still leave a soft door open right beneath the sternum that no amount of conditioning can armor, because the nerves there sit deeper than muscle can reach. He explains that the punch that dropped the anvil carried almost no more force than a hard handshake, that its power came not from his arm but from the timing, the angle, the precise spot, and from a body that put every ounce of itself behind two knuckles for a fraction of a second, and then relaxed instantly. He calls it the difference between pushing a man and striking through him. He brings Junigan up, has him hold a thick pad against his own chest, and he shows the Marines in slow motion the mechanics of it, the relaxed hand, the short distance, the sudden focus of the whole body into one point, the instant return to softness. He has Junigan feel it through the pad at quarter speed, then half, and even at half speed the big man grunts and steps back. "You see," Bruce says to the bleachers, "he is far stronger than me. He will always be stronger than me. If I try to match his strength, I lose in 1 second, so I do not try. I do not hit his strength. I hit his structure. I find the place where his strength cannot help him, and I put everything I have into that place at the moment he least expects it." He looks around at the young faces. "Some of you are big men, some of you are small. It does not matter as much as you think. The big man who only trusts his size has a weakness, and the small man who understands the body has a weapon. Be the second man. Always be the second man." He talks about being water, and this time no instructor exchanges a smirk. This time 300 Marines and a humbled master sergeant sit and actually hear it. Where the enemy is rigid, be fluid. Where he commits, slip past the commitment and answer it. Don't meet force with force. Meet force with the absence of where it was aimed and put your own force where his isn't. When the hour ends, the Marines don't want it to end. Recruits crowd the rail with questions. Even the instructors, the hard men, drift down into the bowl one by one to shake Bruce's hand. The last man to approach him is the anvil. Junigan walks him to the edge of the lot, away from the crowd. The two of them stand by the dusty sedan while Dan loads the gym bag. "I have to ask you something," Junigan says quietly now just between them, "and I need a straight answer man to man." He pauses. "Could you have killed me with that strike if you'd wanted to?" Bruce considers the question seriously. He doesn't dodge it. 2 inches higher and a little more force," he says, "and I could have stopped your heart. Yes." He says it without drama, the way a surgeon names a procedure. "That's why I asked for the corpsman, not to frighten you, because I respect what a strike like that can do, and I never throw one without knowing exactly how far to take it. I took it just far enough to make it undeniable, not 1 inch further." Junigan is quiet for a long moment, taking that in. The knowledge that the small man could have ended him and chose, to the inch, exactly how much mercy to show. It doesn't frighten him. It humbles him in a deeper place than the punch did. "Thank you," the anvil says finally, "for the inch." They shake hands one more time. And this time, when Junigan grips, Bruce grips back, and the two warriors stand there in the gravel holding on a second longer than men usually do, each one taking the measure of the other and finding, at last, only respect. Bruce and Dan get in the car. They pull out of the lot onto the coastal road, the base shrinking in the mirror behind them. For a while neither of them speaks. The fog has finally burned off. The Pacific is bright and hard on their right. Then Dan says what he's been holding the whole drive out. "You know what I kept thinking the second before you hit him? What if it doesn't work? What if this is the one man on Earth whose body actually can take it? What if he really is the anvil and your hand bounces off, and we have to drive home as the men who promised a miracle and delivered a slap?" He shakes his head. "I have never been that scared watching you do anything." Bruce watches the road. "I thought about that too," he says. Dan looks at him surprised. "You did?" "Of course I did. I'm not certain of anything before it happens. That's the whole point of stepping up." He's quiet a moment. "If his conditioning had been deeper than I read it, if the breath hadn't left him, then I would have learned something about the human body that I didn't know this morning. And that would have been worth the humiliation. We don't accept these things to prove we're better, Dan. We accept them to find out where the edge of our understanding actually is. The only real failure is to stay home and never test it." Dan smiles and lets it go. He's heard versions of this for years. He's never gotten tired of it. "That sergeant's going to tell this story for the rest of his life," Dan says. "Let him," Bruce says. "He earned it more than I did." He's the one who stood there with his hands down. And here is the strange truth about that morning at Camp Pendleton. The world never knew it happened. There were no cameras in the bowl, no journalists, no film. It was a closed training demonstration on a Marine Corps base, and the only official record of it is a single line in a base activity log for October 1972 in a clerk's flat handwriting that reads, "Civilian martial arts instructor conducted close combat familiarization for H-2H cadre. No incidents." No incidents. The day the anvil went to his knees, the day 4,000 Marines worth of certainty turned inside out in 5 seconds, the day a master sergeant saluted a stranger in the dirt, and the United States government's complete record of it is 2 words. No incidents. The mainstream story of Bruce Lee never includes Camp Pendleton, the books skip it. The documentaries don't mention it. By every official measure, it never happened, because how could it? How does a 140-pound actor drop a 250-pound combat-decorated Marine, a man 300 others couldn't budge, with a single strike that barely traveled 6 inches? It defies the manual. It defies the physics every Marine is taught. It cannot be real. Except 300 Marines saw it, and one of them felt it. The story survived the only way a true story survives, when the record erases it. By word of mouth. Marine to Marine. The men who were in that bowl carried it with them when they shipped out, told it in barracks and bars and on long flights to far places, and every one of them swore it was real because every one of them was there. The story spread through the Corps the way the best stories do, growing a little in some tellings, shrinking in others. Some versions said Bruce knocked the anvil out cold. Some said he did it with one finger. Some said it was a different base, a different year. The details drifted, the way they always drift. But the core of it never changed, because the men who were there never let it. A small man stood in front of the immovable man, with the immovable man's own permission, and in 5 seconds proved that the hardest thing in the world is not a conditioned body. It's an open mind. Earl Junigan stayed in the Corps another 9 years. But he taught differently after that October. He kept the conditioning, kept the discipline, kept the hardness that keeps a Marine alive in the dark. But he added the other half, the half about structure and timing and the soft door beneath the armor. He told every class he taught about the day a small Chinese man dropped him in his own bowl, and he told it not as a defeat but as the most important lesson of his career. The day the anvil learned that being unbeatable in your own system is not the same as being learned that the most dangerous opponent in the world is the one you're certain you've already beaten. When he retired, the younger instructors asked him, the way young men always ask old warriors, who was the toughest man you ever faced. And Earl Junigan, decorated, scarred, 4,000 Marines deep into a legendary career, always gave the same answer. He'd smile that weathered smile, and he'd touch the spot just below his sternum, the soft door, the place that nerves protect and muscle can't, and he'd say it quiet, almost grateful. 140-pound man who never even swung, hit me one time, I didn't see it, I didn't feel it coming, and then I couldn't breathe. 300 Marines watched. 300 men had hit the anvil with everything they had, and not one had ever moved him or taken his breath. One small stranger did both in 5 seconds with a strike that barely left his side, and then knelt in the dirt to help the bigger man up. October 1972. Camp Pendleton. The morning the immovable man met the water and learned in 5 seconds that a punch was never about the fist.